And I want to start out, not everybody here has ever done training with me or known me before. So I want to go ahead and give you just a little bit of an introduction. This is a picture of my family. This is just a couple years
Oh,
ago.
oh,
And yeah, this was at Jeremy's wedding. And so you'll see the two tall men are my sons, our sons. The tallest one in the middle is Jeremy. He's our youngest son. And he and his wife, Lindsay, live in Texas. Lindsay is a social worker and she works for a hospice doing intakes and working with the clients there in hospice. And she just loves it. Jeremy is actually right now working for my husband. My husband and I moved to California over the last year to help with elder care for my parents who are in their high 80s, low 90s and needing some help. And so Jim, who is a civil engineer, actually has taken out a used car dealer license here in California. And so he's been kind of buying slightly damaged cars, fixing them up, reselling them. And Jeremy, who also loves to do mechanical work, is helping him do that in Texas. So, like, they picked up a car at the Dallas auction, and Jeremy's working on it. As soon as it's ready, then they will put it up for sale. So that's Jeremy and Lindsay. All the way over on the left, you see our oldest son, Benjamin, and his wife, Madeline. Benjamin is an entrepreneur. He has his own business in the area of IT. He's also studying towards a computer science degree. And Madeline is a physician's assistant who works at the clinic associated with Weimar Institute just out of Sacramento here in Northern California. So they're only about an hour and a half drive from us. So we love that. And that lets you know just a little bit about my family and kind of where we are coming from. But I want to take you back in time to when I was about 9. You see here a picture of my mother and myself at about that time. And I have a very vivid memory. At this time, I remember standing in front of a group of adults with this big bowl in front of me and a big measuring cup of old fashioned oats in my hand. And at that moment, my job was to convince this group of ladies that making healthy granola was so simple that even a kid could do it. And so I remember that it wasn't just a like pour and here's the oats and here's the sugar and here's the, fruit or whatever. But I actually had learned, my mother had taught me to teach something about nutrition with the recipe. For example, I still remember we start with old fashioned oats. As a grain, they have a high level of fat, and that helps the granola to stick to your ribs so you don't get hungry before lunch. And that was kind of what launched me into community health education. So it's something that I have actually been doing for over 50 years now. And pretty consistently, my parents did health education on a regular basis in different communities where they were invited to come in and do cooking schools and health lectures. And so I did that all my growing up years. I went to nursing school, continued being involved in these sorts of things, and still do it. Now, this is my grandmother, my grandma Chris. I distinctly remember visiting when I was a teenager. And I remember that every morning she would religiously step on the scale to make sure she had not gained a pound from the day before. And I remember asking her, Grandma, why are you doing that? And she told me, she says, well, now that I've gotten down to my ideal weight, I want to make sure I stay there. So if she even gained a half a pound, she would eat a little bit less that day, make sure she got back down to her ideal weight. You see, there was some history to this. My grandmother used to be quite overweight. She wasn't a real tall woman, but she was overweight, and in when she got to be about middle-aged, she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. My grandfather had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes some years before when, as a sea captain traveling the oceans during World War II, he had fallen very ill. They weren't sure what was wrong with him, but they eventually figured out that he had diabetes. So both of my grandparents had diabetes. And my grandmother, when she got her diagnosis, the doctor wanted to put her on oral medications. And so she started with that, but she asked the doctor, is there anything I can do to um, kind of reverse this so that I don't want to have to take medications all my life? And so Anyway, so she asked the doctor, what can I do about this diabetes? I don't like having to take medication. And the doctor glibly said, well, if you lost some weight, it might help. Didn't give her very much advice. It was before people were really actively understanding the impact of lifestyle choices on diabetes. But she determined that she was going to lose weight. And so she put herself on a calorie restricted diet. She was never had any snacks. She was very careful with what she ate. She tried to make really healthy choices. And do you know that she completely reversed her diabetes? By that, I mean that she was able to maintain completely normal blood sugars, eating normal meals without medications for controlling her blood sugar for the rest of her life. And she was healthy and happy until she passed away at the age of 96, many years later. So I got a real up close view of the impact that lifestyle choices can have on diabetes. And I've been able to watch that over a number of years because, as you see here, this is a picture of my mother's side of the family with all of her siblings and some of my cousins. I'm the little one on the front row with the arrow. And then you see the circles are my grandparents, both of whom had type 2 diabetes. Of their 8 children, one of their daughters and 3 of their sons had type 2 diabetes. So you can see there was a really strong genetic tendency in our family. I have one sibling who also has diabetes. And I actually, because of all of that, as a nurse and a health educator, I've been watching my sugars for a number of years because I was like, well, I know there's this tendency in our family and I'm probably not at my ideal weight, I would tell myself. So I should probably keep an eye on this. But we'll come back to that later. Help me remember to finish that story before we finish today's presentation. So I come from a family where we've had to deal with these things. I have watched my uncles lose their eyesight, lose their legs one by one, end up with a lot of disability, a lot of pain, and a lot of handicaps because of their diabetes. And I've also seen those that have taken the time to be intentional about how they worked with their diabetes, manage it in ways where they had very little disability due to their diabetes, even at the time of their death. So I know that lifestyle choices are huge. And that's why I wanted to bring you all together this week, that we can spend some time talking about how the choices we make during the holidays can really help us get through them successfully, as well as maybe learn some things that can help us even beyond the holidays. So now that you know a little bit about me, I would like to take a few minutes for each of you to introduce yourselves. I'm going to start by giving Cindy an opportunity to introduce herself. She's part of my team. We've been good friends for many years, and you will be hearing from her on some presentations later this week. But Cindy, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Cindy Lesler. I'm a registered dietitian. I live in Michigan, and I'm married. I have 2 children, a married son with 3 adorable children, and of course I think they're adorable, and and a daughter who is a nurse, and she's currently working in the Philippines as a flight nurse.
Right. Well, we're so glad to have you with us, Cindy, and I know we'll be looking forward to hearing from you as well. Just a little sneak preview, Cindy has spent a number of years working with lifestyle intervention centers that work with people that have diabetes and other chronic lifestyle diseases to help them reverse those diseases. She's been very intimately involved in their meal planning and nutritional counseling and that sort of thing. So I'm just really happy that she's able to join us this week. All right. Next, I'm just kind of going to go down my little pictures on the side of my screen. And next is Wendy. Wendy, do you mind unmuting and just introduce yourself a little bit to us? And when your introduction, tell us your name. And I'd also like to know your main reason for joining the challenge this week. And what do you hope to learn this week? What do you want to get out of this?
Hi, my name is Wendy, and I live in Kingsley, Michigan. Actually, it was a neighbor of Lucia's, and I am familiar with her courses, and I've always enjoyed them. I found out that I have prediabetes, and um, right now I don't feel like I'm managing it very well. I've have some health issues aside that, and I just think this would this would be another great reminder and new information and people to push me forward into being more mindful of menus and eating and lifestyle. Um, I have 5 grandkids and a couple of children, and that makes it especially hard during holidays. So this is just great timing for me. Like I said, her programs have been great in the past, and I'm really looking forward to this.
I'm so glad that you've decided to join us, Wendy.
Thank you.
All right. And next we have Jackie. Would you please introduce yourself? You can unmute so that we can hear you.
Okay, I'm Jackie Hegarty. I'm the main admin and founder of a Facebook group called Adventist Vegetarian Diabetics. It was started in 2013, so we've been going a little more than 7 years now. So I'm really pleased with that. We only have 340 some members, which is not a lot for a group that's been in existence for 7 years. But as you can tell from the title, it's very specific. It's, there's a lot of diabetics out there, but not very many of them want to be vegetarian. And they'll look at it and they'll say, "What's an Adventist?" So I've got type 2 diabetes. I was diagnosed in 2000. 2004, I attended a 3-day reversing diabetes seminar that was put on by Weimar. At that time, they were going around the different parts of the country and giving these 3-day seminars. And it was like from Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So, it was the middle of the week, and they could do a lot of stuff. And they served 3 meals a day. I think right now they only serve 2 meals a day. But back then they were serving 3 meals a day, and I thought it was the most delicious food I'd ever tasted. However, I was working full time, and I was busy with church and with the kids, and there was no way that I could spend my time all day cooking from scratch and then walking 5 miles a day. So I put it on the back burner until I was retired. Well, I refuse to admit that I'm retired. I no longer have an office job, but I do still have a few web clients. So that's what I do for my occupation, is a web designer. But I spend an inordinate amount of time with vegetarian diabetics doing research for all aspects that I can think of. Someone comes in and they into the group, and they'll say that they have a particular issue, like Hashimoto's. What is that? Well, I found out what it was. But I love researching things and finding out. And I know I post a lot of articles in the group, and people would rather just have see food and recipes and funny stuff. But I try to keep it a variety of things. That's how I met Lucia. Is that how you say your name?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Lucia joined several months ago. Maybe it's been over a year now. I don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And so when she posted about this challenge that she was doing, I was interested, because it's just something I wanted to see her teaching style and the content as well. So that's my main reason for joining the challenge.
Yeah, well, we're really happy to have you here, Jackie, and it's been fun getting to know you through your group. I've appreciated a lot of the resources you've put there, and I am happy that you are here. I know that you will have things you can share with us as well. So we're looking forward to that. When I get started with these, sometimes I think, well, I have so many wires, I must be done. And then I'll find I was missing one of them. So anyway, we are back in power. So I want to go through a little outline for our program today. Our outline for today is that we're going to have about 30 minutes or so of training. We will have time for questions and answers. And then it's not a challenge if you don't have homework, because the whole point of a challenge is that we want to see you make progress over the time that we are in the challenge in some way towards your own goals. So we're going to talk about how we're going to be making custom goals for each of you. And the overall goal is going to be to come out with a plan that you can implement that will help you get through the holidays successfully. Because if you don't make a plan, as it has been often said, you are planning to fail. And especially, I think that's true in this season when we have to deal with holiday meals, family celebrations, all the emotional stress, good and bad, that can entail. And we are also heading into flu season and what's looking like a COVID surge all at the same time. As far as I'm concerned, that's a perfect storm for pre-diabetics and diabetics. And so the best way to face this next season is to plan for it. And planning for it means planning for how are you going to take care of your health? How are you going to manage and keep your blood sugars under control, maybe even better control than you've had in the past? Today's presentation is in the afternoon, but starting tomorrow, because I want you to be able to have most of the day to work on whatever your homework is and get ready for the next presentation. I'm going to be doing morning presentations. So for people on the West Coast with me, that's going to be 6:30 in the morning. And I know that's a little bit early, but that's already 9:30 on the East Coast where some of you are as well. So I figured that would be a bit of a compromise. I usually get up quite a bit before that. So that'll work for me. And if it's too early for someone to come in and show up live, you will have all day where you can, kind of catch the video and get caught up during, whatever time really works well for you. So I hope that that works. Also, and that's kind of what I'm looking for, doing that early morning on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We will take a break on Saturday, and then our final day will be on Sunday. So just kind of block those times out on your calendar. And I really, really love it when you can show up live, because it's just, there's a lot more energy when there's somebody to actually talk to, and I don't feel like I'm talking to my screen or just talking to Cindy. So if you can, that would be great. There are a few other people that have also signed up, but maybe weren't able to make it at this time today. I'm hoping that maybe they will be able to make it later in the week. If it would help you to get text reminders, maybe 15 minutes before the Zoom training start, just let me know. You should all have my phone number in the welcome email that you got. Emails, because I'll probably email out the homework every day as well, so that if someone didn't happen to get into the Facebook group, they're still going to see their homework. I like to put it several places so that people get it and don't miss it.
And what's that going to come up as?
Lucia at luciatiffany.com.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So as we start into this planning process, I want to share with you a little framework that can kind of help us to organize ourselves and to kind of think through in a logical way how we can go about making this plan for successful holidays. And I call this framework GPS for the journey to health. And in this case, it's going to be GPS for our journey to healthy and happy holidays. Why do we want to do this? Well, as I mentioned before, not having a plan is planning to fail. And so I really feel that it's so important for us to think ahead. When we know we have challenges facing us, thinking ahead can help us come up with strategies, find the tools that we need, and be well equipped to face that challenge. If we just kind of float through the season and it's like, oh, okay, I'll decide what I'm going to eat when I get to the party, or when I get to my mom's house, or, whenever my kids get home, that doesn't tend to work as well. So we want to think about all of the possible obstacles to success that we might run into, and it'll be unique for each of us because we're in different situations and our holidays probably won't all look the same. But I want you to be starting to think about how you think your holidays are going to look. I know that a lot of people's plans are still up in the air, but they still probably have some general ideas, even if you're only looking at what is your household going to do during the holidays. So that's why we're going to go through these steps to making a plan and implementing it. So the very first step is to get a baseline. Getting a baseline is like when you start a road trip, figuring out where you are on the map. Hopefully, you know where you are when you start, but it's really hard to get a route if you don't know your starting point. And I found that many people who are struggling with blood sugars and related health issues often really don't have a good handle on their objective baseline. And that's why I put together that tool, which is your gift for coming in and joining me in this challenge. It's the Diabetic Baseline Assessment. That assessment is in the Facebook group as a file, a PDF file that you can download. So let me know in the chat if you've had a chance to download that yet before I go any farther. Tell me in the chat, have you been able to download your assessment? I think all of you are in the group. And I'll make sure you get yours, Cindy. Okay, Jackie hasn't had a chance to download. That's fine. I just kind of want to know where we were in the process, and that's helpful for me to know. So I will give you just a little preview of what you're probably going to find there, because what this tool does is it helps you to collect some data. Much of it you can get yourself for free. A lot of the rest of it you can get by just making a call to your doctor's office or looking up your most recent lab work. If there are a few things that you don't have, you can decide whether or not that's something you want to go ahead and get. And I have a lot of instructions step by step for how to fill out every single line in this spreadsheet. This spreadsheet will actually give you an objective baseline score. It has several different sections. The first part are biometrics, things like your height and weight and BMI. And then for every piece of data, you can put your particular individual unique results in the yellow column that says my results. And then you will see that there's 4 columns to the right of it. And this might be a little bit fuzzy on your screen, but you'll be able to, it's really clear on your handout. The first column to the right of the yellow one is the optimal range. And optimal range is not necessarily what your labs or your doctor tells you is normal. Normal Americans die of chronic lifestyle diseases. So that isn't the number that we're aiming for. I want you to know what the optimal range is. Those are the ranges where your risk for complications from chronic diseases like diabetes are at their lowest. So that's what the optimal range represents, and it's worth a 1 point for your total score that you're going to be calculating. And then as you go to the right, you will see ranges for each line item that are maybe a little bit away from normal, more away from normal, or quite a bit away from normal. And that will give you then 2, 3, or 4 points. So every line has its own score, and then you can total those lines to get your average score and also to get a score based on these points. Now, on the way on the right side, you will see that there are some yellow squares and some starred squares. The stars are things that I really believe everybody needs to know those numbers for themselves. And it's best if you have recent lab work. If you've had it done for most of these numbers in the last 3 months, then I wouldn't say you have to get them redone. If it's been more than 3 months, you might want to think about when are you going to recheck them, because they can change, especially if you make different lifestyle choices. Some of these can change rather quickly. So this is a way for you to get a baseline, get a handle on where you are right now. And then in a month or 3 months or 6 months, you can recheck a lot of these and you will see if you've made changes, if you've made improvements. We're also going to use this tool to help you with prioritization. But anyway, they're really good instructions with the handout. I think you'll be able to fill it out and figure it out quite easily. If you have any questions, put those questions in the Facebook group. I will be checking in the group before we come on for the Zoom calls so that I can make sure I answer any questions that people have up to that point. The second step in our 3-step process is GPS, for pick a destination. If you get on the road and you got a road trip, you're not going to have a very efficient route if you don't know where you want to end up. So destinations can be both short-term and long-term. Maybe you have a destination where you want to be at the end of this challenge. You might have a little bit different goal for where you want to be by New Year's. Yeah, once you've gotten through the holiday season, maybe the day after New Year's. Anyway, and then you might even want to think about where would you like to be a year from now. But in any case, we want you to pick a destination, whether it's an intermediate one or a long-term or a short-term, but you want a destination. It's the whole question of what is your target. And knowing what your target is will then enable you to write down your goals. And this is going to be part of your homework for tomorrow, is writing down your personal goals for the challenge, number 1, and number 2, for the holidays. Okay. So I think the two will probably be closely connected, but I want you to think about what is your goal for where do you want to be by the time the holiday season is over. SMART goals have 5 characteristics. They're specific. Don't just say, I want to be healthy after the holidays. Okay, that's not specific enough. How do you answer the question as to whether you arrived at your goal? You know, when I was in college, I was in a group that, there was an orchestra that traveled to Eastern Europe. And one of the countries we went to was the Soviet Union. But you know, it would have been really very difficult for us to get to our concert destinations if we had simply gotten on a plane for Russia. We really needed to know what city we were going to. Russia and Soviet Union is a very large country. So without a specific destination, we could still get very lost. And I want you to have a specific goal in mind. What do you want to see? I want to see my sugars not over such and such a number. Or I want my A1C by the first week of 2021 to be, have a goal. Measurable goes closely with specific. It means it's something that I can actually measure and say yes or no, I met my goal. Achievable. If your current A1C is 15, you might not want your goal to be an A1C of 5.5 by the 1st of January. That might not be very realistic. So I want you to think about what's achievable, what's realistic based on what can be accomplished in the amount of time that we're looking at. That makes it realistic. And timely means that you have a goal date. So as part of your goal, you're saying, this is what I want to see the 2nd week of January, or, you know, the day after Christmas, or whatever it is. So think about these 5 aspects when you go to set your goals. Once you have your baseline, you've picked a destination, then the 3rd step is to set up a plan. How are you going to arrive? And we'll be talking more about these 2nd and 3rd steps later on in the week. But I wanted you to get a bit of an overview about kind of where we're going and some of the framework that we're going to be using to develop your plan and your personal strategies and getting your tools. So is that clear? I want to stop here for a second and just see if there are any questions related to this process, like how we're going to go about it. You can put any questions or any comments so far in the chat, and that's where I will see them. And yes, this download is not in the email. This download is in the Facebook group. So I know that Jackie and Wendy are in the Facebook group, and Cindy, I'll get you in there. But that download is in the group. So there's not a lot of posts in the group because it's just for this challenge. So if you just scroll down a few screens, I'm sure you will find that. And you just click on it, and it's really easy to download to your phone or your computer. It is a PDF, and I would suggest downloading it to your computer so you can print it off, because you're really going to want to like fill it in by hand. And if you can print it out in color, it's really nice. So, you know, if all you have is black and white, that'll work too. But color makes for a really great printout. Okay, let's take a look at the brain, because to kind of get us all on the same page as we're going through this challenge, I want to speak a little bit to the role that our brains have in holiday success. You know, I think one of the greatest gifts that God has given to humans is the power of choice. That power of choice is something that resides in the front part of our brain, in that kind of teal colored frontal lobe. And as we have the opportunity to make choices, these choices influence everything else we do in our life. These have tremendous impact on our emotional health, our spiritual health, our physical health, every part of us. And many times we can be tempted when we get into a position that's challenging or difficult to say, oh, I just don't think I can do this. But we often underestimate the power of the will. If we make a firm decision to do something, that's half the battle. And as we choose to do things that we understand are the best things for us, when we know it's the right thing, and when we know that it's congruent with our goals and our values, that's a powerful decision. That when we have congruency in all of those aspects, we experience happiness and joy. And so I want to encourage you as you think about choices and decisions, of which we'll have many to talk about this week. Remember that you need to take into consideration, what are your values? What do you know for yourself is right or wrong? How important are these priorities of taking care of yourself? What do they mean to you? What are the long-term outcomes of the decisions that you make? You know, our whole lives and the trajectory of our lives is often determined by the small decisions that we make every day. It's not the big earth-shaking decisions, which of course have impact as well, but the daily decisions carry their weight. And when we are intentional about how we want to get to our goals, when we think about what are the reasons we want to achieve those goals, we're clear on our motivation, we're clear on why we want to do this, and we understand the implications of our choices, that is powerful. And so I see my role as a facilitator of this challenge this week to help you think through the implications of many of your choices. What I have found in my work with people around the world in different continents is that much of the time we make decisions that are very uninformed. By that I mean, we don't truly understand the consequences of choices that we make that really affect, in this case, our health. It's true for other aspects of our life as well, but we're focusing in on our health. And there are many people who struggle with chronic diseases like prediabetes and diabetes that don't fully understand the implications of the choices they are making. So I feel that a big part of my job this week is to help you understand your options. That way, I feel like you can make an informed choice. Part of that might have something to do with my background as a nurse. I've been involved with helping patients get ready for procedures and surgeries. And part of that routine is always explaining. I might not be the one explaining it, but part of that process is making sure that at some point before the procedure, that the patient is fully informed of all of the consequences or potential consequences of the procedure. You might be getting something done that's as minor as taking, a little bit of local anesthesia and removing a small cyst from the hand. But before you have that done, someone has to go through the procedure with you and say, this is how the procedure is done, and there are risks. This could happen. Here's something else that could go wrong. And amazingly enough, for nearly every medical procedure, one of those potential risks is the risk of death. And not until the patient understands what the risks are for this procedure are they able to sign what we call an informed consent, which means they sign on the dotted line that they understand the risk, that they are choosing to go forward with the procedure in face of those potential consequences. Obviously, in that situation, many of the potential consequences are negative. What we're going to be talking about this week are decisions where many of the potential consequences are very positive. They are things that we want to experience. And so if as we go along, I really encourage you to be engaged, to ask questions. I love why questions, because for me, if you don't really understand the whys behind choices that you make, it's not fully informed. And so I want you to be able to make choices with your eyes wide open, understanding the implications. I do not feel it is my job to tell you how to live your life. I do think it's my job to help educate you so you know what the consequences of your different choices and decisions are. And then it's up to you to make that choice. So I hope that that will be helpful to you. And I also hope that that clarifies maybe how I'm approaching the training that we're doing this week. I am not here to tell you what to do. I am here to help inform your choices. So I hope that's helpful. And I really want you to understand how important this function of the mind is. Because you see, our minds and our bodies are really closely connected. We can't think things without impacting the physiology of our body, the way systems work. All of our thoughts, even, have an impact on our bodies. And that's why we're going to spend some time talking about thoughts when we talk about stress later this week, because stress is very much centered around our thinking processes. And we're going to be looking at how that interacts with our physical health and what are strategies that we can use to help manage that as well. So we'll be touching on a lot of different things this week, but I do hope that they will all be helpful to you and that they will help you to go forward with understanding. And as you make your plan, understand why you're doing it and what is going to actually help to keep you on track after you've made the plan. Because we can all sit down and write things down on paper. That doesn't always mean much happens. So I don't want you to just walk away with a piece of paper at the end of this challenge. I want you to walk away with a toolbox of tools that you can use to implement your plan, and with confidence that you can do it, because you can. And that's what this is all about. Okay, now I am ready to take questions. I'm going to stop sharing so that you can see me. And yes, any questions about anything that we've talked about today, how we're going through the challenge, the steps, what's the next thing to do? I know we haven't talked about homework yet, but that's next. Any other questions? At this time, I don't mind if you unmute to ask questions or make comments. So how does this approach sound to everybody? Is there anything else that I didn't talk about that you'd like to make sure I include this week? Jackie, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking that you're right on the right track, because you have to make a decision of what you want before you can start anything. And I've got a saying that says, if you're serious about your goals, you make a plan. If you're not serious, you'll make excuses.
I like that. I've also heard people say things like, if you don't have a plan to succeed, all you really have is a dream.
Yeah, that one too.
Yeah. So both of those I believe are true. So Wendy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a good, I like the GPS. Yeah, I think it's a good thing to start with, and having a plan is, excuse me, everything, especially for me. If I don't have a plan of what I'm going to eat for breakfast every day, the rest of the day doesn't go well.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally hear you. I think that's great. And as we go through, if things come up, like you think about things between trainings and you're going, oh, I wish Lucia would talk about this or mention this, please feel free to either, drop questions or comments like that in the Facebook group, or you can text me, or you can just bring them to our meeting. So that'll all work fine. So let's talk a little bit about homework. Our homework for tomorrow, we have not a real long time between today and tomorrow morning's presentation, but there's still enough time for you to download your baseline assessment. That file's in the Facebook group, and start going through it. You probably have a lot of that information already. Like some of it you just need to step on the scale, some of it you just need to take a tape measure and do some measurements. If you know what your last A1C was or what your last fasting blood sugar was, you'll want those. And there's also some things like a lipid profile and some other lab tests. Now, if you don't have results for all of those lab tests, but you want them, first of all, check with your doctor's office to make sure they don't have a record sometime in the last year of you having had those tests. Also, in the handout, I have an online place where you can go and order tests that you're missing, and you can just pay for it online and go to any Quest lab, which is like, and you can find them in like 46 out of 50 states, and it does include Michigan and California. And you can order and just print out the requisition after you've paid and take it right to a lab. They don't charge you anything. They draw your blood, and your results will come back online in the same portal for most things within 1 or 2 days. So that's a way to get that information if you really want to complete your baseline assessment. We'll work with whatever pieces you have. The more pieces you have, the better and the more complete your assessment. So I encourage you to work on that and bring that with you tomorrow, print it out and filled in with everything you are able to fill in by our training tomorrow. You have a few more days that you can still collect information if you're needing to. But let's bring what you found tomorrow to the training, and I'm going to walk you through some of that. Now, besides that, there's one other thing that I'd like you to do for homework, and that is to do something kind of fun, which is watch a video. This is a short video. I forgot to look at exactly how many minutes. I want to say it's about 7 minutes. And the link for that video is in the Facebook group. At least it will post in there by 5 o'clock this evening. So by my time, which means like in about 10 minutes, it'll be in the Facebook group. And you can just click on that link and watch it. It is called How Not to Die from Diabetes. And it's an excellent little overview of lifestyle approach to diabetes by Dr. Michael Greger. He has a very dry sense of humor. I love listening to him. I think you will enjoy it. And everything on his website is evidence-based, which means that basically what he's doing is he's going through the published studies on a particular subject. And always, every year, he and his team go through every study that comes out on nutrition and anything related to nutrition in English. And then he makes these little nuggets that he puts up on specific nutritional topics. But this one on How Not to Die from Diabetes was just really excellent. So that link is in your Facebook group, and you can go there to watch it, to just click on it, and then you can watch it. Okay. So I think that kind of completes our training for today. Unless anybody has any questions, put it on your calendar, and I will look forward to seeing you back in the morning in the next episode of our training. It's been really great to have all of you here. Thank you for coming, and let me know if you have any other questions or comments.